The 1926 Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Rail has had a complete restoration, but however, during application of the decal, the railhead kind of got a little messed up. This is the tie plate that will be used to display the rail. The tie plate was made in 1925 for the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad to fit its specialized 130 pounds per yard rail, 130 RE. The tie plate's unique design allowed for other sizes of rail to be used as well, including 131, 136, 140 pounds per yard, and 132 pounds per yard could be seen on these tie plates today. The 1926 rail that meets this tie plate is 130 RE, confirmed DL&W. Location that the rail was found was in Duryea, Pennsylvania, right along Stevenson Street on the old Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Bloomsburg branch. The rail has just neared complete restoration, and now we're going to bring you downstairs into my shop so we can see what the finished product looks like now. Here is the completed 1926 product. This is the 1926 130 pounds per yard Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Rail. As you can see up close to the rail here, we have applied the famous Lackawanna decal that could be found on the sides of steam locomotives, switchers, and also on the sides of the passenger cars. The color I used was sun yellow gloss. That color is the closest I could find to the original Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western yellow used on the sides of steam locomotive tenders, diesel switchers, and diesel locomotives of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. As you can tell, there was a little mess up during the process. Some paint had accidentally splattered and got on the head of the rail. Not really ruining the mirror finish, but it's not quite as good as what it once was. So we are going to go ahead and fix that by doing the repolishing procedure with 3,000 and 5,000 grit sandpaper and then 3,000 and 5,000 grit polishing pads. Let's go ahead and get started. For the refinishing procedure of the head of this rail, we are going to be using 5 different grits of sandpaper, starting off with 1,500 grit sandpaper and working our way all the way to 5,000. And then, when that procedure is finished, we're going to use my 2 polishing pads in 3,000 and 5,000 grit to finish it off. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our 1,500 grit sandpaper and we are going to start off by sanding the head of the rail. Now this is the polishing procedure. Now when you're sanding the rail head, that's basically getting all the rust off to achieve a shiny finish. And then you go higher and higher in grit till you get to 5,000, and then you're going to get the mirrored finish that you want on the head of your rail. Now the reason why we're starting back at 1,500 is if we look at the head of the rail, it wasn't quite as shiny after we applied the decal because some paint had gotten onto the head of the rail, causing it to be yellowed a little bit. So this is what we do to get rid of that yellow on the head of the rail and get it nice and mirrored once again. So notice as I go higher in grit, the rail becomes even shinier. Now notice, because of the way the rail moves during the sanding procedure, we're going to put a tie plate underneath the rail in order to make it easier to polish. So the tie plate we're going to use for this temporary procedure is this 1925 DL&W tie plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay the tie plate like this for momentarily. And we're going to move the rail to get it over here. So now we lower the rail. Now the rail is going to be easier to work with since it is now sitting on a tie plate. The tie plate will help steady the rail during the finishing of the polishing procedure. So now the rail will move. So now the rail is secured on the tie plate. So it's not going to really move as much as it did on the bench. Note the finish we are putting the rail to is MAINLINE finish, where the rail is really mirrored smooth. The mirror finish is MAINLINE style, where the head of the rail is so smooth that you're basically looking into a mirror. And note the reason why I like to sand like this is because I want a nice straight grain going across the head of the rail. Now note the sandpaper is sometimes going to leave a weird finish across the rail. If that happens, use polishing paper. The more you use the polishing paper on the rail, the more mirrored it's going to get. Going to move to our higher 3000 grit. Now note you have to go pretty hard when you're polishing these rails. And now we're going to go through our 3000 grit polishing pad. in order to get rid of the streaks that the sandpaper had left. And now, most important of all, our 5000 grit. And note, this can get very tiring, so be sure that you stop and take breaks as needed. Because if you don't, your arm is going to be on fire by the time you finish. And now that our 5000 grit sandpaper was applied, we're going to go ahead and apply the 5000 grit polishing pad in order to finish the 1926 DL&W Rail. And now, if you want, you could just use your shirt and give it a little wipe. And then, finish it off. And there we go. The 1926 Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Rail has now seen a complete restoration. From start to finish, the procedure took about 2 days and 3 hours to do. The first day, going into the sanding procedure, and then polishing, and then applying the first and the final coat of paint to the rail. Here is the famous Lackawanna emblem that symbolizes this beautiful piece of history. This rail, we are now going to bring it up and put it on the tie plate where it's going to go on static display. Here's the tie plate. Let's go bring up the rail. As you can see, the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Rail is ready to go on display. So now watch very carefully as we carefully lift the historic beauty and put it on the tie plate. And the Lackawanna side will face this way. And here we go. This is the 1926 Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Rail after a complete restoration, and now we'll proudly sit here on static display for the public to see. Thank you guys for watching this rail restoration video, and we will see you on our next DL&W adventure.